In a world ruled by fear and fortune, one quiet rebel dared to redefine joy. From a curious boy on a Grecian island to the founder of a garden that would grow through centuries, this is the story of Epicurus, a philosopher who taught the world how to live simply, think deeply, and die without fear. Beginnings: a young mind awakens. Born in 341 BCE on the Aegean island of Samos, Epicurus came into a world ruled by myth, militarism, and philosophical giants. His father, a modest schoolteacher named Neocles, and mother Charistrate gave him a grounding in literacy and learning early on. But Epicurus wasn't a passive learner. He was a questioner from the beginning. At just 14 years old, while attending school, he confronted the idea of chaos and creation when his teacher couldn't explain the origins of things. That frustration sparked a lifelong pursuit of clarity through reason. Soon after, Epicurus moved to Athens, then the epicenter of intellectual inquiry. There he studied under Pamphilus, a Platonist, but quickly grew disenchanted with Plato's abstractions. To Epicurus, philosophical truth shouldn't reside in intangible ideals. It should live in observable reality, in the human experience. This was his first break from tradition. Later, he was influenced by Nausiphanes, a follower of Democritus, whose atomic theory laid the groundwork for Epicurus's scientific understanding. These teachings planted seeds. Everything consists of atoms, and the soul dies with the body. No divine punishment awaits. Such bold concepts would soon form the bedrock of Epicurean philosophy. Shaping a new path, philosophy as a way of living. In his 20s and 30s, Epicurus began teaching and writing privately, gradually refining a philosophy that stood in direct contrast to the dominant schools of thought, like Stoicism and Platonism. Around 306 BCE, he settled in Athens and purchased a modest home with a lush courtyard. That courtyard became the garden, his school, a place unlike any other in Greece. The garden welcomed everyone, men and women, slaves and foreigners. Status and wealth were irrelevant. What mattered was the pursuit of truth and tranquility. In this quiet, leafy refuge, Epicurus taught that philosophy isn't for show, it's for the soul. Unlike other schools that debated in public or performed for crowds, Epicurus prioritized private contemplation and personal happiness. His teachings weren't about achieving fame or virtue for recognition. They were about building a life free from fear, anxiety, and unnecessary desire. Foundations of Epicurean thought. Epicurus believed that pleasure was the highest good, but not the kind of pleasure associated with luxury or excess. For him, true pleasure meant freedom from physical pain and mental disturbance. This state was called ataraxia, tranquility. His philosophy can be distilled into a few key ideas. Nothing to fear from the gods. Deities exist, perhaps, but they're indifferent to us. Fear of divine punishment is irrational, nothing to fear in death. When we die, our atoms disperse, and we no longer feel pain or joy. Death is a non-experience. Pleasure is the goal, but simplicity is the key. The most satisfying pleasures are simple: friendship, thought, and health. Desires must be measured. Natural and necessary desires, like food and shelter, should be fulfilled. Vain desires, like fame or luxury, should be avoided. One of his most famous maxims: if you wish to be rich, do not add to your money but subtract from your desire. These tenets weren't just philosophical, they were therapeutic. Epicurus saw philosophy as a form of emotional medicine, helping people confront existential fears and anxieties. Introspective correspondence, his writings. Though much of Epicurus's work was lost, his letters survived and offer a deep look into his mindset. He wasn't fond of long-winded dialogue like Plato. Instead, he wrote concise letters and aphorisms, often to friends and students. One of his most touching letters was written on his deathbed, suffering from painful kidney stones. Yet he remained joyful, sustained by memories of past conversations and friendships. This wasn't Stoicism. It was contentment achieved through philosophy. Some gems from his writings. Death does not concern us, because as long as we exist, death is not here. And when it is, we are no longer. Of all the things which wisdom provides to make life entirely happy, much the greatest is the possession of friendship. The wealth required by nature is limited and easy to acquire. The wealth required by vain ideals extends to infinity. Each line reveals a radical confidence that a fulfilled life comes from within, not without. Legacy, misunderstood but enduring. Epicurus died in 270 BCE, but his influence spread through Rome thanks to thinkers like Lucretius, who wrote De Rerum Natura, On the Nature of Things, a poetic exposition of Epicurean ideas. Sadly, early Christians labeled Epicureans as hedonists, confusing his concept of pleasure with indulgence, and condemned him. For centuries, Epicurus's name was equated with excess, even though his philosophy preached minimalism, contentment, and internal peace. This distortion stunted his reach until modernity re-examined his words in context. Today, Epicurus is celebrated as a forerunner of secular humanism, a champion of mental health through rational thought, a philosopher of the everyday, prioritizing simple joys over societal expectations. His values mirror the core of your own thematic explorations: Pankaj, mindfulness, resilience, independent thinking, and the power of one thought. Where others built ivory towers of philosophy, Epicurus planted a living garden. He believed anyone, anywhere, could live well if they only knew how to think clearly, desire wisely, and connect deeply. Long after the atoms of his body dispersed, the spirit of Epicurus remained, in quiet gardens, thoughtful hearts, and every soul that dares to seek peace over power. His legacy isn't just remembered, it's lived.